Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is Carl. This is my 97 Del Sol powered by a D16A, and these are valve seals, which I'm going to be changing today. Valve stem seals are a pretty common issue for high mile engines, older engines. You'll notice that once you start going downhill, building a bit of vacuum in the engine, and then you put your foot back in the throttle, you'll blow a bit of smoke, start burning oil. And that's just oil getting past the valve stem seal, building up on the valve stem, and then once you give it some throttle, it sucks the oil through. So it should be a pretty easy job. There are a couple of specialized tools you're going to need. One, you're going to need a torque wrench, some feeler gauges for checking valve clearances. On this engine in particular, it's rockers, so we'll just have to check the valve clearances on that. If it's an overhead cam, you don't have to worry about that. I think that's about it. So let's get to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all my spark plugs and remove the valve cover. Now before I continue, I'm going to plug up all my spark plug holes with some shop rags, and then also there's, you can see there's a little oil gallery right there. There's another one back here somewhere, right there, and then another one there. So I'm going to plug up all those with shop towels just so I don't drop anything in there, and then we can continue with removing the rocker assembly, which is just these 10 bolts here. And we'll go from there. Now that that's all done, I can go ahead and remove the rocker assembly. When you're removing the rocker assembly, you will also need to remove the two 10mm bolts on either end and the top adjusting bolt for the distributor. And then when we lift this thing off of here, I just found out, you don't want to lift this top girdle portion. We're going to lift by the cam retainers, I believe, and the whole thing should come up as one. Now I'm just going to remove the cam cover so I have access to the cam bolt, so I can turn the engine over. Alright, so the cam cover is off now. I've got a ratchet on the end of the cam. I've got a clean rag over here so I can hold this end of the cam down because we've got nothing else holding the cam down at the moment. And I'm just going to find the very bottom of the stroke on whichever cylinder I'm going to do first, which in this case is cylinder 1. So I'm going to turn this until my extension has gone down as far as it's going to go. And I want the very bottom of the stroke because the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to fill the cylinder with compressed air in order to hold the valves up while I remove the springs and retainers. And if I had this at very top dead center, as soon as I fill this cylinder with air, it's just going to push that piston straight down and everything's going to turn. Don't ask me how I know that. So yeah, you want very bottom of the stroke. If you're going to do the rope method, then you would want to bring it to top dead center. But in this case, we want it down to the very bottom. So this is where we're going to need a couple other specialized tools that I forgot to mention in the beginning. This is just an adaptation of a compression tester, so I can hook the air compressor up and pressurize the cylinder. And then I've also got my valve spring removal tool. You're going to need at least this. You can do it without this. You can fill the cylinder with rope and then bring the piston to the top. So I'm just going to put this in here. I've got my air compressor set to about 40 psi. You could probably go higher, but I don't see a need to. So I've got this thing tightened up now, just so that I can push down and on the spring enough to get the keepers out of there. So I'll just grab a magnet. Just got a magnet here. I'm going to push down and then just try and pull those out. And there's the other. And just pull the spring off. And then to remove the seal itself, I'm just going to use some pliers. being careful that I don't actually touch the valve, because if I score that valve up, that's probably just going to destroy my new seals right away. But just work it and pull gently until the thing comes off. And I'm just going to make sure I clean off any old seal that was on there with a rag, clean any oil out from underneath it. We'll grab our new seal. This is an exhaust valve, so I'm going to make sure I have the exhaust side seal. In this case it's the blue ones. This kit came with blue ones and brown ones. They're marked on the packaging which one's which. And then I'll take a little bit of oil out of the valve cover here and then just put it on the seal. I'm also going to lube up the valve stem itself. And then just gently put this on here. And now I'm going to take a socket that fits nicely over the outside of that seal. I've got an extension on here. And then I'm just going to work that down until I can't anymore. Give it a couple of light hits with a dead blow here. And then that's it. Seal changed. And we're just going to repeat that for each one. And another tip for reinstalling the spring and the retainers is if you take a little bit of assembly lube or some moly grease and just put a little bit on the valve stem where the keepers sit in. There's a little ridge there. It's just going to help your retainers stay on there while you're trying to install the spring, because they do tend to fall out. But this stuff's nice and sticky, so it'll hold the retainers on there. Alright, I've got all my seals replaced. Now I'm getting ready to put the rocker assembly back on here. And just to be extra safe, I'm going to pour a little bit of assembly lube over the cam here. Get all the bearings lubed up and the cam lobes themselves. Now just set this back down in here gently, making sure I have it the right direction. Alright, now I've got my rocker assembly just set on here. I haven't tightened any of the bolts down yet. Before I do, I'm just going to squirt a little bit of gasket maker in rockers, the cam cap number 1 here, in this area here, and then also on number 5, just along here, and obviously both sides. And then I'm going to torque these down. The larger bolts, I think they're 8mm, those get torqued down to 22 Newton meters, and then the smaller 6mm bolts, those get I think 15 Newton meters. I'll check that. I'll put a picture up on the screen. Now that that's all torqued down and sealed, it's time to check our valve clearances. So I'm going to start on cylinder number 1, which requires me to find top dead center. So I'm going to check for the timing marks on here. I'll also be putting something in the cylinder to make sure the piston's up at the top, and then check the valve clearances. Now on the intake side, we want 7 thou of clearance between the actual valve and the rocker, and then on the exhaust side, I believe it's 9. Now I'm just going to take my feeler gauges and check underneath each rocker, and like I said, 7 and 9. Your feeler gauge should slide in there, but have a little bit of resistance on it. It shouldn't be loose. You can also check, since we're using 7 thou on this one, you can go up to 8 thou. 8 thou shouldn't fit in there, and then you know you're good. So I'm just going to go around and check each one of these. If it was set properly before, nothing should have changed. But since we did remove this and retorque it, it could have moved a little bit. So that's why we're checking it. smoke. Runs smooth. Job well done. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this video helped some of you. If you enjoyed, give me a thumbs up, maybe subscribe. Also, if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. I'll see you in the next one.